If you ache for truth, goodness, and beauty, if you're hungry for a Christianity with substance and strength, if you long for a faith that's big and bold and biblical and all about Jesus Christ, if you're inspired by the idea of one church that has spanned 20 centuries, 24 time zones, and 2 hemispheres, enfolding every race, nation, and language, then you're considering Catholicism. There is a Greek word that its origin is 1,600 years old, but drives some Protestants batty, just around the bend, makes them nuts. The Greek word is Theotokos. It's Greek for God-bearer. It gets translated as the Mother of God, and it's applied to Mary. And it drives a certain flavor of Protestant, again, out of their mind. How can you say that Mary is the Mother of God? I say a certain flavor of Protestant because the key reformers, Luther thought Mary was the Mother of God. Calvin thought Mary was the Mother of God, or affirmed Theotokos. Huge numbers of sort of classical Protestants do. The whole Eastern Orthodox world affirms Theotokos. Mary is the Mother of God. But a certain flavor of Protestants and evangelicals, it just drives them out of their minds. Because I think they misunderstand the origin of that word and why it matters. Because obviously it's about Mary, sure, but that word is really about Jesus. And it's about protecting who Jesus is, defending the nature of the Incarnation. So let's get into this a little bit about the Theotokos. This is, I think, going to be the last of our little Divine Mysteries series. Maybe we'll do one more. We'll see. But we've talked about the Trinity and we've talked about the Incarnation, whether God has a gender. And so now I want to talk about kind of what follows from that, which is Theotokos, which is really ultimately, again, not about Mary. It's about Jesus. It's not just some dusty old debate. It really is a truth that defines whether or not we can be saved. So grab a coffee, settle in. Let's unpack why this Greek word Theotokos matters so much and what it doesn't mean and why it drives some folks out of their minds. The year is 431 AD, and the church is struggling with a lot of heresies. Christianity is now legal in the Roman Empire. In fact, it's now the official religion of the Roman Empire. But that doesn't mean that everybody is singing, kumbaya about Christianity, because people are saying, well, we're really struggling to understand Christianity. We're really trying to understand doctrine and the nature of the gods. They'd gone from, the Roman, the Greek religions and the pagan religions where there are all these different gods and spirits to this notion of one God, right? To the notion of monotheism in Christianity. And they're trying to wrap their minds around what exactly that means and how it works. And the question is, who exactly is Jesus, this Jesus Christ? Is he God? Is he human? Is he both God and human? And how does that even work? And in the middle of this theological cage match, there's a guy named Nestorius. He's the Bishop of Constantinople, which is the capital city of the Roman Empire in the East. And so he's a very important Christian leader. And Nestorius sort of wades into this. The term Theotokos was floating around, but Nestorius has a huge problem with Theotokos. He has a huge problem with this concept of the God-bearer. And I'm just going to say as an aside that when I occasionally wade into social media, like on X or whatever, and I start seeing some of the evangelical, outspoken accounts there try to put down Mary as the Mother of God, and in their anti-Marian rants, they don't realize that all they're doing is just articulating the position of Nestorius from the early 400s. So let's explain his position, because I think you're going to find that for a lot of evangelicals, it's how they think about Jesus. So Nestorius says, look, I don't like this Theotokos. I don't like this God-bearer term for Mary. I think we should call her Christotokos, which means Christ-bearer. That's a better description, because she didn't bear God, she just bore the Christ. Now, this sounds like splitting hairs, right? But it's not. It's a really, really big deal, because it's about who Jesus is and whether he can save us. Nestorius was worried that calling Mary the mother of God made it sound like she was divine or something, like she gave birth to God's essence, like she was the mother of the Trinity. So what Nestorius wanted to say is that Mary only gave birth to Jesus's human nature, to the Christ part of him, whereas the divine essence of him, was from all time, and she had nothing to do with that. Now, on the other side of this debate, and kind of on the other side of the Mediterranean going south, you had another bishop named Cyril of Alexandria, who's like, okay, hold up, Nestorius. If you say that Mary was only the Christotokos, only the Christ-bearer, that she only bore the human part of Jesus, then you're splitting Jesus into two people. There's a human Jesus and there's a divine Jesus. And that's not what Christianity teaches. Cyril's argument was that Jesus is one person, fully God and fully man. And those two natures were perfectly united. Mary didn't just give birth to half of Jesus. She gave birth to the whole person, who happens to be God incarnate, to the incarnate God. And that's why she is the Theotokos, the God-bearer, the mother of God. So anyway, you had Nestorius up in Constantinople, and you had Cyril down in Alexandria, and the two of them are shouting across the Mediterranean at each other, and the whole Christian world is a giant, brouhaha. And so the church calls a council in the city of Ephesus in Asia Minor in 431 to settle the question. So bishops come from all over the Christian world, and they're in this hot, crowded city, and they're arguing, and they're trying to nail down the truth. And in the end, Cyril's side wins. The council declares Mary Theotokos, not to puff up Mary, not to elevate Mary, but to protect the truth about Jesus. Because if he is not fully God and fully man fused into one person, if the incarnation isn't a complete incarnation, only a partial incarnation, if the divine nature is sort of riding around inside his human body, like in a mech suit, then the whole Christian faith starts to wobble. The incarnation, God becoming man, is the foundation of everything. It is the foundation of our salvation, the foundation of the Eucharist, the foundation of the church. If you get Jesus wrong, Christianity falls apart. Now again, let's be clear about what Theotokos means and what it doesn't mean. It does mean that Mary is the mother of Jesus, who is a divine person with two natures, human and divine, completely fused, not confused, but fused, hypostatic union. Theotokos does not mean that Mary is divine herself, or that she created God, or that she's the mother of the Trinity. Nobody is saying that she's a goddess, or that she existed before God did. That is a misunderstanding that some Protestants, not the classical ones, try to foist on Catholicism. They'll say, calling Mary Mother of God is putting her up on a pedestal, it's elevating her to be a goddess, making her part of God, it's worshiping her. And it's a complete misunderstanding, because this is not about Mary's essence. She was a human being. Nobody's saying she was anything other than a human being, but she is the human being that bore the incarnated God. She conceived and gave birth to the full incarnation of God. And so the term Theotokos and Mother of God is about defending the Incarnation. It is about defending the integrity of the Incarnation. It's about Jesus. Calling her Theotokos is a way of saying, Jesus is God. He really took on human flesh in Mary's womb. If you think about it, it's like a firewall against bad theology. I literally could not do this without you, because this show is 100% listener supported. There are no ads, no sponsors. So if the episodes are helping you to understand the faith, to answer your questions, or draw you closer to historic Catholic Christianity, would you consider becoming a patron? For as little as $5 a month, you'll get every regular episode organized into topical playlists, plus exclusive bonus content, extra conversations, video Q&As, deep dives, live streams, behind the scenes, and more. Just head to patreon.com/considering Catholicism or tap the link in the show notes. Together, we're educating, equipping, and exciting people about the beauty of the Catholic faith. All right, let's talk about why this debate isn't just ancient history. Stuff that happened in 431, like who cares, right? The fight over Theotokos was stamping out the heresy called Nestorianism from Nestorius, which again said that Jesus's human and divine natures were so separate that he was almost like a divided person. He was almost two different people. And Mary just basically gave birth to his body. And the Council of Ephesus said, no way, Jesus is one person, period. But here's the kicker. Like I said, a lot of modern evangelicals, they don't realize it, but when I see them on social media saying, Mary just gave birth to the human side of Jesus, and why are you making her a big deal? You're articulating the ancient heresy of Nestorianism. They're uncomfortable, I think, or it's like they're uncomfortable with the idea that the baby that was in Mary's arms or was in her womb was the eternal God. And she really gave birth to the eternal incarnate God. But that is the whole point of the Incarnation, isn't it? If Jesus isn't fully God and fully man, then he can't save us. He can't bridge the gap between us and God. And there's another heresy that Theotokos guards against, and that is the heresy of Arianism, which I've spoken about before. Arianism prompted the Council of Nicaea in 325 and the Nicene Creed. Arianism said that Jesus wasn't fully divine. He was just this really special creature. He was the highest and greatest of all of God's creation. Like the first and greatest of all created things was the Son. And if Mary is just the mother of the human Jesus, then Arianism starts to creep in because Jesus is a creature. He's suddenly not God anymore. Now, some of you are walking the dog right now, driving in your car, listening to this, going, this all sounds like academic philosophy, blah, blah, blah. But these things really matter. They're the heart of the Christian faith. They're the heart of the gospel. Because if Jesus isn't who we say he is, who he says he is, then the cross and the resurrection, the Eucharist, all of it unravels. And that's why the church has fought so hard over this word. And again, the classic Protestant reformers, guys like Luther and Calvin, had no problem with Theotokos. They understood what that meant, and they certainly didn't want to be Nestorians or Arians. Luther called Mary the mother of God all the time. Calvin said the concept of Theotokos is good theology, but he was worried that the language of it caused uneducated people to have misunderstandings, okay? But they affirmed the underlying theology. They got that the Theotokos doctrine was all about Jesus. It's not about making Mary a goddess. But over the last 500 years, Protestant theology has gotten less rigorous, especially pop theology, what you get on the internet, what you get in these X accounts that are anti-Catholic. And so by the 19th and 20th centuries, especially in evangelical circles, Theotokos started sounding too Catholic, too tied to Marian devotion. It has to go. And that's where all the misunderstandings kicked in. So you'll go on, I go on X, that's the social media platform that I use, and you'll go on there and you'll see the anti-Catholic accounts going, Catholics worship Mary. Catholics make Mary divine, like she's God. Why focus on her at all? She was a teenage girl. She was a good girl, but she just gave birth to Jesus's human nature, to his human body. But let's be crystal clear. Catholics do not worship Mary. We do not believe that Mary is divine. We do not believe that Mary is a goddess. We do not believe that she's part of the Trinity. We do not believe that she gave birth or that she's the mother of the Trinity, God in that sense. We honor her because she's the mother of our Savior. We worship God alone. And Theotokos, the whole point behind it, the whole reason the Council of Ephesus declared it in 431 was not to turn Mary into a deity. It was to protect the integrity of the Incarnation, to protect the truth that Jesus was God incarnate. I mean, what's the alternative? Because if Mary isn't the mother of God, then who is Jesus? A half and half hybrid? A divine spirit in a human suit? And that's where the logic all begins to break down. So why does all of this matter today? Well, for one, Theotokos shapes how we think about Jesus. If he's fully God and fully man, then his life and his death and his resurrection have infinite power to save us. It means that the Eucharist is really about his body and blood, because the same Jesus who walked on water is the one that we receive at Mass. It means that the church, his body, has authority because it's rooted in him. And yeah, it shows up in Catholic liturgy too. So we think about January 1, which is the feast of Mary, the Mother of God. Or we think about the Rosary, where we meditate on the mysteries of Christ's life through Mary's eyes. These are not distractions from Jesus. They all point to Jesus. So for Eastern Orthodox, for Catholics, for classical Protestants, Theotokos is a reminder to keep Jesus at the center. When I was in the evangelical world, before I really began studying Catholicism, I was confused by this. I used to think that the Marian stuff was just extra baggage. But part of my road to Rome was realizing that Mary is like the frame that is around the picture of Jesus. She doesn't compete with Jesus. She helps us see him more clearly. To wrap up here, I've come to really love a lot of Marian art. I have a lot of it around me here in my recording space, images of Mary and Jesus. And as I look at that, as I look at the Madonna with child, the icons that I have here in my recording space, here's Mary the Theotokos holding God in her arms. And that's what it's about. It's about a God who loved us so much that he became a baby born of a woman to save us. It's not about Mary being a divine superhuman. It's about Jesus coming down and being God with us and in protecting the integrity of that. That's really what was in her womb. That's really what was in the manger. And that's the truth that the church has been guarding for all these centuries. One church, one Jesus, one Theotokos. So I hope you'll chew on all this and ask yourself, what does it really mean to call Mary the Mother of God? And I hope that if this concept is new to you, that you'll be able to wrap your mind around calling Mary the Mother of God, not because of what it says about Mary, but because of what it says and protects about the truth that he was Emmanuel, God with us. So, keep exploring, keep praying, keep thinking, keep talking, and keep considering Catholicism. We'll be back with another episode very soon. And this show is 100% listener supported. My patrons keep the lights on, and they let me spend more time researching and recording so that these episodes keep coming. If this show has helped you, would you consider becoming a patron? For as little as $5 a month, you'll get every regular episode organized into topical playlists, plus exclusive bonus content, extra video Q&As, deep dive courses, live streams, and more. Just head to patreon.com/considering Catholicism or tap the link in the show notes. And would you please rate the podcast on whatever platform you're using and write a review on Apple Podcasts or on consideringcatholicism.com. And you can drop me a line. Patrons can comment directly on Patreon posts or Spotify. I read every one. Or you can always use the contact form at consideringcatholicism.com, or you can email me at consideringcatholicism@gmail.com. I love hearing your questions, your comments, and your stories.